Okay, Mayor, we are now live.
Thank you very much. Alrighty. Thank you all for coming to our special meeting of the East Lansing City Council held this Monday at 7 p.m. Will the clerk please? Thank you very much. Alrighty. Emily, would you mind me? Thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Councilmember Babcock?
Could you do that one more time? I did not hear it.
Present.
Councilmember Gregg?
Here.
Mayor Stevens?
Here. Thank you, clerk. The next item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. I will look for a motion for that. It is moved by Councilmember Babcock, seconded by myself. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the regular city council special meeting from July 14th. I'll look for a motion to approve those.
I'll move that.
Moved by Councilmember Gregg, seconded by Councilmember Babcock. Any discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. Councilmember Babcock, I'm not getting your audio for some reason, or it might be on a little bit of a delay. Would you mind checking into that really quick, just so we can make sure? I cannot hear you at this point. All right, I think she's logging in on another device. I'm gonna wait for her to get back on, so we can have full participation for that. Do apologize to those attending about the delay. Just want to make sure that folks are hearing what our council members are saying. We've got some important issues on the agenda, so I want to make sure. Seeing another Lisa Babcock on that.
Unmute.
Yep, I would turn off the other device though. Yep.
There we go. Thank you.
Yep, no problem. Okay. There was a motion and a second on the table to approve those minutes. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Councilmember Babcock, are you still having issues with the audio? George, point of procedure. While this is being sorted out, would I be able to move to communications items? Or do we have to take the item 1.4 before any other action is taken?
You can take them out of order if you want. You might want to just give Councilmember Babcock another moment to see if you can sort it out.
To be fair to those watching, this is the first real Zoom delay we've ever had, and I think that's pretty good for how many Zoom meetings we've held as a council. So far, so it's not bad. It's more user delay than program, so not a big deal at all.
It could be network.
Yeah, that's maybe.
Councilmember Babcock, can you call in by phone with a smartphone and use the one-touch connection. Can you hear me when I say, can you use a phone?
She said she won't be able to hear. She said she couldn't hear you guys.
Okay, can someone type that to try a
Hi,
phone?
so either I can hear you or
That's-
you can hear me,
yes.
but apparently,
That's working. I hear you now.
okay. I'm trying
you
to figure
hear
out how
us,
I
though?
can hear all of you without the feedback. So I'm
You could
sorry
turn
about
off the
this.
volume on your
It
computer.
worked in the last meeting.
Oh,
Is everything off on the other computer, the second device? Is that all turned off?
Yeah, Councilmember Babcock, we can hear you very clearly, but if you cannot hear us, I would suggest getting on another device
I can't hear
to
any of you.
hear the.
Can we text or something? Let me try calling her. Hold on. Hold on.
I do apologize, folks, about the delay.
Hi. No, this is horrible.
Councilmember Babcock, if you could mute your, there you go.
Yeah.
Emily, could we mute her?
Give me- I'm-
Is there a closed caption option that she could be reading as well?
we have closed captioning done on the meetings, but
I think it doesn't show up on this feed, though. You have to watch
Okay.
it through the city's live feed on the website.
another option could be to just have Councilmember Babcock call in on the call-in line while her face is on the audio.
Yep, I think that would probably work. George, if you can hear Emily, what her suggestion was. Okay, I'm getting a yes.
You're muted now.
Yes, we could hear that.
Yes, we can hear you very faintly from there, but it might be, oh no, it's not out of George's.
Can you hear me, Councilmember Babcock at all? No.
Hear me?
Okay, she's gonna try calling in on the code.
Yeah.
Yes, we
I heard
can.
that, Lisa. I heard that.
I will try to speak directly into the computer. So
Beautiful. Okay,
Yes.
wonderful.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, guys.
Thank you. Sorry for the delay, everybody. Thank you, George, Emily, for troubleshooting. So our next item on the agenda is election of a Mayor Pro Tem. This is a very important process and appointment. And so I will call for nominations. And then the clerk will make a roll call vote on those nominations. So I will say this now. Are there any nominations for the Mayor Pro Tem? And if nobody is going to make a nomination itself, I believe it is allowed that I make a nomination. So I will nominate Councilmember Gregg as the Mayor Pro Tem.
Second.
And are there any further nominations for Mayor Pro Tem? I will ask once more, are there any further nominations for Mayor Pro Tem? And just one more opportunity, just because we have some audio running, but are there any further nominations for Mayor Pro Tem? All right, if there are none, I declare the nominations closed. The nominations right now are Myself, Councilmember Stevens, Mayor Stevens has nominated Councilmember Babcock, Councilmember Gregg, my bad. I was looking right at the screen. Myself, Mayor Stevens has nominated Councilmember Gregg for Mayor Pro Tem, and that is the only nomination at this point. Will the clerk please conduct a roll call vote to that effect?
Councilmember Babcock,
Yes.
Councilmember Gregg,
Yes.
Mayor Stevens.
Yes. That passes unanimously. Mayor Pro Tem Gregg, is there anything you'd like to say?
Thanks, guys. I appreciate the vote of confidence.
Congratulations.
Congratulations. I have full confidence, and I'm looking forward to working with you a little bit more closely in the future. The city clerk will administer an oath of office either next week in person or on our next city council meeting. But that is the process done. Thank you very much, and congratulations. All right, now we move on to our second section of the night, communications. The first item on that agenda is just an announcement that all written communications are posted on the online agenda packet. If you made an online or you made a written communication to council members that didn't make it on that agenda, that you want to have made it on there, please reach out to me. I know that there have been some folks emailing us individually. And so if you want that included in there, please just let me know if you don't see your communication on there. Our next item is communications from the audience. I will look to Emily to let folks in. There is a 5-minute time limit on folks talking. And if you do ask questions, we'll wait until the end of your time to answer those. And I'll look for council members specifically to do that. So thank you very much. And Emily, I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, the first caller on the line is a phone number ending in 336. You are now allowed to address council.
Hi, this is Talise Murray. I am the chair of the Human Rights Commission. And I just wanted to say that I'm really excited to see this new era of leadership here in the city of East Lansing with Mayor Stevens and newly appointed Mayor Pro Tem Gregg. Both of you have been really great allies in the work of deeper DEI work, diversity, equity, and inclusion work, and kind of promoting the work that the Human Rights, formerly known as the Human Relations Commission, has been doing over the last few months, and Mayor Stevens over the last few years. And I'm just really excited for this new leadership and our new partnerships that we can have in this work. And I see this transition of leadership as an ability for us to further this work and further bring protections and rights to our citizens surrounding our 14 specific classes and making this city a more equitable place for everyone. That's all. Thanks, Emily.
Thank you for that. I don't have a response particularly to it, although I will say thank you for that vote of confidence. Emily, I'll look to you to let the next caller in.
Okay, the next caller is Joyce Farley. Joyce, you are now allowed to address council. You may need to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yep.
Yes,
Oh,
indeed.
my apologies. I was not ready, or I didn't believe that I was talking. I thought I was just attending the meeting and listening to what was being said, specifically as it regards to the opening for city council member, and what exactly you guys are looking for in terms of moving forward, but more specifically addressing the need for more diversity, more Black representation, and more of an alliance conversation between the Michigan State student body as well as Black residents who are in the city, mostly because of school or for other employment opportunities. So that's what I was hoping to engage in and find out more information about.
Thank you for that call. Just as a little bit of clarification, so we give everybody the opportunity to talk at these meetings. I appreciate your call in. I agree with many of the things that you just said. And we're going to be talking about that later in the agenda. But everybody gets an opportunity to talk, so appreciate you taking that stance and that opportunity.
Okay. The next caller will be Crystal Rose Davis. Crystal, you are now permitted to address council.
Crystal, you might be muted.
Hi, sorry, I was having technology issues. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, I just want to give a vote of confidence towards Aaron and the current city council leadership, and support, you guys' efforts at, appointing 2 new members, and again, supporting the work that we're doing on the Human Rights Commission. So anyhow, I just wanted to give that support.
Thanks, Crystal.
Thank you for that. Emily?
Okay, the next caller we have is a caller with the phone number ending in 660. 660, you are now permitted to address council. Oh, okay. I think that they left. So our last person is Rachel Sweet. Rachel, you are now permitted to address council.
Hello, just to clarify, so now Jesse Gregg is now Mayor Pro Tem, and then Aaron Stevens, are you the mayor until November 2021? Is that what's right now?
Yes. Although the caveat is that Councilmember Gregg, now Mayor Pro Tem Gregg, has not taken the oath of office yet, which will be administered by the city clerk. So I believe that is interim, if I'm saying that correctly. I'll look to George for that, but
Acting maybe.
Until you take the oath.
yeah. So until they take the oath, it's not official, but I took my oath last week. So yes.
Thank you.
Okay, and those were all of the callers.
Okay. Thank you very much, Emily. Thanks for those that called in. Our next item is communications from the mayor and council members. I will start on my left, Councilmember Gregg.
Well, I am woefully unprepared with a prepared statement. I will say that I'm looking forward to moving forward. I think that we've got a unique opportunity with 2 vacant council seats. It's not something that I was looking for during my term, but I think that we've already had a lot more people step forward with interest, people who are probably too intimidated to mount a campaign, which is definitely intimidating. And so I think that we have a unique situation where we can appoint some very dedicated, passionate citizens who might not have the personal wherewithal to mount a campaign and the time that takes. So I'm really looking forward to seeing who applies. I think that we've got a lot of important work started. We certainly have a lot of work to do to manage the COVID epidemic. So the fact that we still have people who are stepping up and expressing interest in the position during this really troubled time is positive to me. I think we've got some great dedicated residents that are looking for ways to give back, and I can't wait to meet them.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Gregg.
Acting
Mayor Pro Tem Gregg. Councilmember Babcock.
I'd like to echo some of Jesse's thoughts. I don't want to spend a lot of time looking backward. Last week was highly unusual in the annals of government, no matter how you slice it. I do want to assure people that there were reasons, and primarily I felt, and I believe others did as well, that we were not getting the legal support we needed to deal with COVID. And I had also expressed my concerns about the prosecution process, among others. However, I have often said that, particularly in East Lansing, an asteroid could knock out the entire city council. And this being 2020, I don't want to give any asteroids any ideas. We've had just about enough of 2020. But
please don't.
Yeah. But that said, the amazing thing about East Lansing is that if every one of us currently on city council were to not be here, there are at least 50 to 200 people who could take our place. We all have something to contribute, but in this town, especially, everyone has something to contribute. So we are going to go forward. We're going to do the best we can going forward. That's all we can do, but we owe you at least that much. So I look forward to the future. I look forward to the many people I've heard from or contacted about applying for city council. There are many more out there. We've got great things ahead of us. We've got some real work to do, but we can do it, and we're going to do a great job. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Babcock. So I will, I'll state a couple of things that have been on my mind that, you know, I've told to some folks individually, and I've responded to some press as well, but I wanted to say it here, you know, while we're sitting at the table. So I did not run for the position that I am in currently, but I will serve, and I will serve effectively. We have huge issues to tackle coming up with students headed back while COVID-19 continues to present challenges in East Lansing, and our need to support our businesses during that process and the community during that process. Every day in this country, we see examples of racial inequities across the country, and this council will have to address this within our own community. And I'm ready to continue working with staff that have presented really great ideas and the activists in our community to push change forward. And, you know, I'll say, you know, that next day after the council meeting at 8:30 in the morning, myself, the city manager, and other city staff, as well as Councilmember Gregg, we're on a call with MSU administrators, the county health department, local businesses, and others to talk about move-in and steps being taken to mitigate risk from the virus. The work doesn't stop. I didn't ask for this, but I'm ready. I will serve, and we will move forward because the truth is we don't have another option besides to move forward. And so we've got a lot of things on the horizon, but I'm excited and I'm optimistic about the process going forward and about the future of East Lansing, and I'm ready to work with leadership to do that. As well, during these uncertain times, and given that this is the last year of his contract, I'll be moving and hoping to push to renegotiate and extend the contract to the city manager, George Lahanas, at a future meeting. This would be an item for a future meeting, and how this would look if we had council support for it, which is why I'm talking about it at a public meeting, would be we would appoint 2 members of council to negotiate with the city manager and hopefully bring back a contract to be voted on at a meeting if there's a reasonable medium met. The appointing of those council members to negotiate would be on a future agenda if there's support of that on the council. And I just want to state, I do believe in the leadership of our staff and the city manager. And with all the talk about continuity and my message on that, I think it's important that we send that message clearly. And so, I'm looking forward to that process going forward, so that we can have a sense of continuity moving forward. So thank you for your leadership, George, and I'm looking forward to having that conversation. And as well, I wanted to mention one thing. So this has been talked about a couple of times, but and I'll mention a little bit more when we have the conversation about appointing new council members. But I think we really should work with folks like at MML and other agencies to hold a training and create a training on Robert's Rules, FOIA, OMA, and many other topics for the new council members. I think we're going to be, we're going to have a lot of people that apply that do have service experience as well. But if those folks aren't selected, then, people who are newer should know how to get an item on an agenda, who to talk to do that. We want to be able to hit the ground running because, again, there are so many things that we need to do. And that means, that every council member should be able to do that. I think we've got a really great bench in East Lansing of folks that have served in the past, that have been in city government, that we could rely on. And I'm going to commit now that I'm going to be reaching out to folks that have served in the past, kind of asking the questions, what do you wish you knew when you walked in on day one? What's something that you wish you had a little bit of a training on? and I'll hopefully work with the city manager and maybe even city clerk to accomplish a training like that, because I do think it's important that we hit the ground running. My next statement is really just a thank you to those in the community that are sticking with us through this unprecedented time. We do have a lot to do, and I think that we're going to go through a process tonight for appointing those new council members. But during all that time, we've really got a lot happening in the community, and that means the work doesn't stop. So I thank you for your vote of confidence in me, even though I did not run for this role. I will serve effectively, and I'm proud to be here. I'm proud to serve the city of East Lansing. So thank you for that. Okay, I will move on now to the city manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. So just a brief congratulations. I know for both our mayor and mayor pro tem that this was unexpected, but I think for all of our council, you don't get to pick the time of your leadership. It sort of picks you. And we're in a difficult time here, but I look forward to working with and for this council in its new form, moving forward on lots of items that we have to do, and carrying the city's mission forward to make the community better in the future. Obviously, COVID presents a lot of challenges for us, but we're here, we'll be working on it. As the mayor said, there's lots of people working on making sure we have a safe re-entry of our students. So we look forward to that work continuing and supporting our business community. With that, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The city attorney is on a planned vacation. He is not here at the moment. So I will move on to item number 3, our business agenda. And the first item on that agenda is to set a public hearing for August 11th, 2020, to consider a modified special use permit application from the Delta Gamma House Corporation for the property at 605 M.A.C. And I will look to Tom Fehrenbach for that. Thank you very much for being on.
Thank you and good evening. This is really just to set a public hearing for August 11th for the item as you have mentioned. Essentially, due to a technical error, this did not end up on your last agenda. So we are taking the opportunity here with this special meeting to rectify that situation, put them back on their regular schedule.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions for Tom? Okay. Seeing none, I'll look for a motion.
I'll move.
Okay, it's been moved for approval to set, and I just want to clarify that motion is to set a public hearing for August 11th for the item.
Yes.
Okay, and it has been seconded by Councilmember Gregg. Or sorry, oh my God, I keep doing that. It has been seconded by Councilmember Babcock. Any discussion on the item? All right, seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, same sign. Seeing none, the motion passes unanimously. That is on the public hearing. Thank you very much, Mr. Fehrenbach. All right, our next item for discussion is item 3.2, discussion of city attorney RFP Cuse. And this is my item on here, but I will actually look for a little bit of discussion with the city manager about how this process will move forward.
So we actually have the proposal that was issued in 2019. So it was issued rather recently. If you had a chance to go through it, I think it's a comprehensive look at what you would want to do in terms of legal services. So with council's direction, we can make changes to it. We can update it so it has all the right dates, and then we can set it out for consideration by attorneys firms that are qualified, and then set an interview process where council would come in and essentially the same way we're talking about with council members, interview the firms and then make a selection. I had heard a discussion that perhaps you want to put a time limit on this one and potentially mention that it's for a year, or I heard 6 months or perhaps 9 months, and then give council a chance to assess what direction they want to go during that time to see if they want to continue with that specific firm or to do some sort of a different process. So that of course is a decision for council of whether you seek your counsel now that will serve the city for several years into the future, or whether you essentially go with a process to have a short-term attorney's firm fill in, and then you can make decisions during that period.
Okay. I have Councilmember Babcock, and then I'll go to the Mayor Pro Tem.
My original thought was that it would be an RFP with a quicker turnaround, perhaps a September 1st turnaround. And because of that, it would be hard for a lot of firms to gear up if they hadn't participated last year. However, I think now that the start date would be October 1st, it may be worth going to, say, a 3-year contract. I could go either way on this, so I'm up for conversation.
Mayor Pro Tem.
I have just some feedback on that. I think 6 months is too short. I want our staff to have some security in their continuing legal expertise, but I also feel like this is an experiment to see whether a municipal firm would suit the city better. But I would also like to reserve the idea to visit the idea of bringing in-house legal representation in as a city employee, which would obviously require a charter change. So that's not something that we can direct. That's something that would have to come from the voters. And so my personal feeling would be something with a slightly shorter term, like a year. We wouldn't, I guess I would need feedback from that, whether that would be worth it for the firms to apply or whether they would need more security in order to feel comfortable responding to this RFP. I'm not exactly sure how that works, but my personal preference would be to see like a year term so that we can kind of assess the value for the service, and then within that time decide whether or not we wanted to bring in-house legal or explore the opportunity by offering the city of East Lansing the opportunity to give us direction on bringing an in-house counsel.
Okay. Councilmember Babcock, you have something?
Yeah, thank you.
You're cutting out, Lisa. Look at right.
Yeah.
Look right at the
Okay.
picture.
Sneaking right up. I have my agenda on the other screen, so if I look at it, I can't be heard. I would say, and it breaks my heart as a solo attorney to say this, but I would say that a firm, I think, has more depth to serve us better. And this is, believe me, like an arrow through my heart. But we can have, I'm amenable to having that conversation at some point. I just thought that I'd share that because of the range of legal activities a city is involved in, a firm may be better. But again, we'll hold off. A year sounds good to me. I don't know what law firms would make of it. So I'll hand it back. Thank you.
City Manager.
An option, of course, would be to do a year and then have options for renewal, or an option to renew for multiple years beyond that. And during that time, you can make an assessment of the service and how comfortable council is and how council views that. And then perhaps we can do an analysis if you'd like us to look at the in-house option. Not saying it's a good option or not, just saying that we can look at that certainly. Yeah. But you'd likely need to hire several attorneys. And
actually, that's why my hand was up, was to say
it would be several staff, I'm sure. But that still would be an analysis you'd want to look at some point if council wants that to analyze that. So perhaps a year with a renewal would encourage people to apply.
I would support that.
Okay, George, I'll just look to you to clarify. So what I'm hearing from other council members is that they do want a shortened contract. They'd be okay with the renewals on there. Do you think that if the opinion of yourself and maybe another couple of council members is that we should evaluate to see if in-house counsel is an option? Do you think that year contract allows for that adequate time for that discussion to be had?
I think it's a reasonable time, especially if you have a renewal, an automatic potential year renewal or 2-year renewal that you can do, and it gives you an option. If everyone is completely satisfied, then you can stay the course.
Okay.
But that's something we can certainly look at as one of your strategic priorities if you want to direct us to do that review and give you feedback on that during the process. It might, of course, we also have to figure out from council's perspective when this firm would start in terms of having a time for a transition.
For a transition, of course.
They have, I don't know how much overlap they want, but just for the cases to be transferred, if it's something that a new firm would just meet with our existing firm and say, here are the cases, or is there some transition time that we would need?
Okay, understood. Yeah, I think that Councilmember Babcock's comment was probably apt to that point. Then a quicker turnaround time means that we could have that conversation on a transition period. Okay, I'll switch over the conversation, maybe the meat and potatoes of the actual RFPQ. Were there any edits, changes, opinions that folks had? I know that the library board had wanted some input based on what happened at a public meeting last week. And then, if other council members have other comments, I think this is the time to say them. Councilmember, yep. Go ahead.
Yeah, speaking of the library, I was trying to figure out under the scope of service as part of this contract. I was thinking at first putting it into the first paragraph where it kind of outlines the variety of services that would be sought, but also possibly just including it as another bullet point. Basically asking that whomever applies either has the knowledge of or is willing to learn Michigan library law. There's been a lot of legal challenges to the library this year, and COVID especially has made it interesting. So that was something that was important to our library staff. And then the only other feedback I had on this was that the included timeline in this is obviously not relevant and we would have to update it. So
that makes sense. Councilmember Babcock, do you have something?
I did. We have someone who.
Could you speak directly into the mic? Sorry.
Sorry. Yes, if we have firms who don't have the RFP sent to them can apply, correct?
So we can post it on the website and,
Okay.
send out information so that it can be available for anybody who wants to submit. So I don't think there's any limitation. I don't believe there was any limitation last time that only the firms that received it were eligible to apply. I think it was to spark their interest, but anyone could apply.
Right.
And we could do it again that way.
Okay.
So George, talk to us maybe a little bit about that. So what is the outreach on this going to be?
So I think there's a pretty significant list of firms that are known municipal firms that would be the type of firms that we would want to get it automatically. But then certainly we could, publicize it on our website as well. I'm trying to think if a press release would have the impact that we want or the reach we want. We could do that and say the city of East Lansing has issued an RFP for city attorney services and direct people to our website for the application. But I think last time we had a total of, I think it's like 15 or more than a dozen firms that were specializing in municipal law that we would send it to directly.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, I'm kind of always under the opinion that a press release never hurts a situation, even if it might not really help. So maybe that's something that we could explore, but I do understand the point of the folks that are out there will receive it. Councilmember Babcock.
We might also consider contacting the State Bar Association. I know they have classifieds in the Bar Journal, but they might have another way of reaching people.
Mm-hmm.
I also, we got a comment from, someone is trying to join in who wanted us to discuss the fact that the same law firm had represented the city for 60 years, but Ed's getting good at getting in, and he's a very eloquent man, so I'll let Ed Rushton take over when we get to him. Thank you.
Okay. I'm looking at my email now. So there was a public commenter that wasn't able to get in to the call originally. Then is that what I'm understanding?
That's the way I'm understanding it. Emily?
Okay. We can move back towards that then after we address this item. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
Do you want to set dates for us? For instance, issuing it, I can make these modifications and we can issue it directly this week. And then have responses 30 days out.
Yeah, that makes sense to me.
So the end of August, I'll pick a Friday, the closest Friday. Let me look to see what a Friday would be. But basically giving 30 days, does that sound sufficient for council?
That sounds sufficient for me, although I am not a member of a law firm. So is that the typical time frame? I'm trying to remember from last year, or is that a little bit of a short?
It was about a month last time.
Okay, beautiful. Thank you.
It looks like we do have another caller. Would you like me to call on them?
Yeah, you know what? If there are technical issues, we understand that. So yeah, we can have another caller come in.
Okay, so caller with the phone number ending in 753, you are now permitted to address council.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you, Councilmember Babcock, for getting me in. I really appreciate it. Those are very kind words you said. Really, I don't know. I think it's just something that we should observe. And I was wondering, if I'm not mistaken, our city attorneys for the last 60 years have come from the same law firm?
Yes, that is my understanding. I'm getting
That's correct.
I
Okay.
don't know the exact year, but I know it's been a long-standing firm.
Okay. Did you ever receive any reasoning when you first entered office as to why that specific firm is always relied upon for providing candidates for city attorney?
So Ed, if you don't mind, I'm going to write down this question, but
Sure.
you got 4 minutes, and I don't want to take up some of that time in there. So I will write that down. But if you had any other comments or questions.
Oh, really? That's my only one today. Yeah.
Okay.
Nothing too steep.
Okay. I'll look to other council members if they want to make a comment on that question specifically. Okay. I'll just say no. I wasn't given a reasoning. I will say that I think throughout my short tenure on this council, that firm's been very, very responsive to me and helping me through some certain issues, and going in a new direction doesn't discount that. But I think we are moving forward at this point. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna go back to the item on the agenda, if that was the breadth of the comment at this point.
Yep, that's all I got. I think I feel pretty encouraged that that's been taken into consideration, and we're really trying to stress it's kind of, I feel like, how we've approached the conversation about a new chief of police. So really appreciate the work you guys are doing. That's all I got.
Okay, thank you very much. Thanks for that comment. Thanks, Councilmember Babcock, for making sure that everybody gets a voice, and thank you, Emily, for actually implementing that. So I will move back to the item as it's hold. So we were talking about timeline. And we were talking about a 30 days issued this week, and where to send it out. I think that we have a clear understanding so far. And then we had one comment from the acting mayor pro tem, on just a point in there about library law specifically. And if we can make that change, I think that's an agreement. Okay. Do you need action on this?
Yeah, I would say, do you want a return date so we can issue it this week as soon as possible, hopefully, obviously before the end of the week? Do we want to have a return date of the 21st or the 28th? The 21st still gives us it gives us 4 full weeks for people to have a response. The 28th gives them 5. I think that the 21st would likely be enough time, and then we can schedule people in for interviews the following week or after, and it still gives us time to get someone up and running before the current contract runs out. So not having done a transition of this magnitude before, I think the 21st would work, but looking to council if you agree with that. That gives 4 full weeks for a firm to reply. And then a little bit of extra time, so council will still have about 5 to 6 weeks before the expiration of the current contract. So we have time for a bit of a transition.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. Do other council members have comment?
I'm good with that. That makes sense.
Sorry, sounds good.
You want to make a motion to issue the RFP with the corrections, with the updated dates, and return on the 21st of August?
So moved. Oh, sorry.
I'll second.
Okay, it's been moved by Councilmember Babcock, seconded by the acting mayor pro tem. Is there any discussion on this?
No.
All right. Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Councilmember Babcock, I'm sorry, I'm going to make sure that you were voting in the affirmative.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That was 3 votes in the affirmative. That passes unanimously. Thank you very much, George, for helping us through that. And we'll look for those responses. Now, our next item on the agenda is the discussion of council member appointments. I think the reason why many people are tuning in and why we're having this conversation. So this was an item that the staff contact is me. So I'm gonna run through some of my thoughts on this, the draft timeline, and then kind of how we move forward. So by charter, City Council must appoint new members within 30 days of any council member resigning. That 30 days started on July 14th, so it's a fairly quick turnaround time. So my thought process when I was thinking about how we were going to go about doing this was making this process as public as possible with as much opportunity for input as possible. And so the timeline that I had laid out includes a very, very preliminary application that would just ensure that the qualifications are met. And I'll actually, really quickly, I'm gonna look to the city manager to state what those qualifications are to be on the city council.
Yep, the only ones are resident and registered to vote.
Okay, and then above the age of 18, which is of course.
It's implied that you're over 18 and
Yep.
that's all applied under the registered to vote part. Yep.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And so to have that, an online application, accessible application for anybody in the public that meets those qualifications, put out tomorrow morning. And that would be on our website, hopefully accompanied by a press release that would be sent out. Then council would receive applications a week after it's posted, ending, and I said Tuesday, July 28th. That would give a week's time for folks to respond to that application. If you look down at those draft application questions, which we will talk about a little bit later, I think they are fairly self-explanatory and fairly general. And so I think that would be adequate time for folks to respond. And then after that, council would look to schedule public interviews for folks. I said July 30th and 31st. And that would be the same week that we would receive applications back, and it would give us a little bit of time to process those, maybe a day about that, give time to staff to actually arrange those interviews, and then we would go forward with those in a public way. Now, one thing that I did want to discuss is my thought process on this. And this is very highly dependent on how many applicants we actually get. So I want to make that caveat that if we get a number that we cannot justifiably interview in that short time frame, then we might have to have a conversation about a screening meeting where we talk about our top candidates that we want to interview in public. But my thought process, and if this is mistaken and I am not in support from other council members on this, is that we interview almost everybody that's eligible. We meet those eligibility requirements, and in order to really be as public and transparent as possible, we interview everyone. Again, logistically, that might not make sense if we get a lot of applicants that we might not be able to interview through, but I think that's maybe a bridge that we cross when we get there. So I'm gonna pause for a second in my timeline explanation to gauge reactions to that from the city manager, Councilmember Babcock, and Acting Mayor Pro Tem. So Acting Mayor Pro Tem, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm generally in favor of that. I think that I'm very conscious of the fact that this is a position that is usually elected by the city, and that we have been given this kind of, responsibility to select someone that, might have been elected had they gone through an election process. And so I think having it as public as possible and having it as accessible as possible to our residents is an important part of the process for me. I'm a little intimidated by the idea of possibly interviewing, 60 people. Hopefully we wouldn't have that many, but, also hopefully we would. I'm really, encouraged by the number of people that have expressed interest to me. So yeah, I would say generally in favor of doing public interviews for any applicant that is eligible. But like you said, if it is just an impossible feat, given the very tight turnaround, we might have to, assess that. I think, yeah, I did have one thought, and I think I just wanted, maybe Mr. Lahanas, you could give us your opinion on it. Having this entirely online does have a slight accessibility problem if there's people who do not have access to online. do we have some sort of function where they could submit a paper application and maybe it could be input by staff, or they could
We could certainly note that and write it on the page that if somebody has, and we can put that in the press release, if they can't access an electronic document to request one from us, we'll come to City Hall, fill it out and provide it to us. So we can certainly put that as an extra note to make sure we're not excluding anybody from the whole universe of people.
As long as we have some way to accommodate people who can't do an online form. I think the online form makes the data much easier for us to manage because it kind of auto-populates and we don't have to worry about handwriting, but it does have, you know, that possibility of excluding people. So, yep, I think that's my feedback generally.
Councilmember Babcock.
On one hand, I'm hoping we get a few hundred applicants. On the other hand, it'd be tough to interview that many people, but I wouldn't be surprised, this being East Lansing. People are really committed. So I would like to do all of the interviews publicly, in person, interview everyone. If we are blessed with an overwhelming number, then we can try to scale back. So thank you.
Sure. The one point that I make on this, and I'll look to the city manager because we had a brief conversation about this beforehand. So I had put a note in this timeline that said questions would be released to the applicants and public prior to the interview. We obviously should still be, you know, releasing those questions to the applicants, simply because if this is a live, you know, event, those that are going in the beginning will have a disadvantage to those that are might be interviewed the day after, right? Just because they would know what questions we're going to ask, and to make it a fair interview process, we're going to be asking the same questions of everybody. So, you know, I put a note as well that I would want, at least during, you know, the next week, if this is how we move forward, the community to kind of give us some input on what questions they would like to see during the interviews. But, you know, so, but I had a conversation with the city manager about what the process would be to actually finalize what those questions are. So I'll look to George to kind of explain that.
So along the mayor's lines, the thought was that we could not have the meeting, the questions all prepared in the public meeting, because obviously that means we're doing that now. And then you're not going to have the opportunity to see answers with a shorter period of thought about them. People will have to be a little bit more impromptu. So our thought was to appoint a subcommittee of council, 2 members, and then those members could prepare the list of questions as a draft. That draft could be released to the potential candidates the night before the interview, and it would say these are draft questions. The questions will be finalized by council the morning of the interview, because you can't really delegate that authority. But largely, we're saying, you know, giving the person the warning that they could change, but these are the questions we think we'll be asking. And then they at least have 12 hours at the least to think about the questions, which gets rid of this disadvantage to the person who goes first and second, because they will have at least seen the questions for a short period of time. So then council starts the meeting the day of the interviews. You confirm the questions. You can add, change, or do what you want, but these are the questions that 2 members have prepared. Then you go into the interview process. We had thought if you keep it to around 5 to 6 questions, you should probably do some sort of a time limit. We thought 25 minutes to give you 5 minutes to get the new person, the next candidate, online. And that would give you 30-minute blocks of time. Doing it that way, you could schedule a 4-hour block of time on Thursday, perhaps a 4-hour block of time on Friday. And at that alone, you could get a pretty significant number of people. And then for council to decide, if you make the decision at the end of that process, have public input at the end, public comment, and then make your selection then, or have an additional meeting at a later date to make a selection. And we thought that adding public comment at the end of both of those days is useful, because then if you're doing it at the beginning, it could throw off the entire interview time schedule.
Yeah.
This way you start on time and say, you know, 1 o'clock, 1:30, 2, and of course it could slip a little bit, but it's a decent way of trying to get it done. And then you hear 25 minutes of answers. And if people don't get to all the answers, you're keeping it fair by saying you have 25 minutes to answer these questions. And of course, you read them the question, they give the answer. So I think that was what we thought as a possible way of doing this, where the questions would be prepared by 2 members, then released to the candidates the night before, and then finalized by council. They're told that they're draft only, and they could be changed, but likely they'll be significantly similar to what the council members have come up with. And then we move forward. And then we need council to give us times for either Thursday night, Thursday day, Friday day, that you could all be together, because obviously we need all three of you for this critical task. And then we can go from there in terms of scheduling these blocks of meetings. If we don't need the second meeting, if we only get 8 candidates or 6 candidates, then we get rid of the Friday meeting. You do it in one meeting on Thursday, and you're done with it. That's depends on how many candidates you get. And of course, telling people that there will be a public interview televised may have something where some people decide not to apply because they don't want to go through that process. But obviously I think it's a pretty important process, because it gives people the sense of what the job will be like once you have the job, which is what we're doing here. So
that makes complete sense. And Mayor Pro Tem, did you have a comment?
No, I'm contemplating this idea of the questions in the subcommittee. So we're going to solicit questions. People who have suggestions for questions can submit them to us, and then 2 council members will kind of go through submitted questions, possibly fill in gaps with their own questions. And then, I mean, it seems fine. Kind of would rather have a separate meeting to do it, but sure. I mean, it's getting tight fitting in lots of little meetings, but I don't think it would be a very long meeting. I kind of would rather do it in public if you guys are not totally opposed to that.
No, that's fine. And again, I made a note there, and of course I got the date wildly off, and I don't know why, but Monday, August 19th, but all this is subject to change. Really, my thought process is to make this as public as possible. And so if council wants to have a public meeting where we talk about what the questions that we ask are, I agree with you. It probably wouldn't take that long, but I would gauge, scheduling time and maybe staff time that would be allotted to that. George, do you think it's possible that we would be able to do a public meeting like that on Wednesday of next week? So a day after we get the applicants back. So, it's a quick turnaround time, but we'd be able to have a public meeting on questions specifically. So that way we'd actually be able to solicit public input in a big meeting.
Correct. And of course, we can provide some sample questions as well, and council can come up with their own questions. So you have some things to pick from and have a list to start from. And then Wednesday night meeting. And then that might work out as well, because if you do get too many candidates, you might want that Wednesday night meeting.
Yeah, we might want to use that.
Have a screening, yeah.
It's a screen, and then you can each come with your top 4 or 5 or 6 candidates, and then we can throw those into the bunch instead of having 25 people, which would be very hard to interview 25 people.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. I like that. Wednesday night is fine for me. I can clear Wednesday night.
Finalizing questions and screening if necessary. Then a Thursday and Friday if necessary. We were just discussing that the blocks of time, perhaps as big as 4 hours.
Yeah.
On 4 hours gets very tough to continue on in interviews, but that's up to council, obviously. What you think?
3.5 hours is our meeting time, so we've got, maybe take a 10-minute break in the middle, but I think we can get it.
So we can do a doodle poll tomorrow to council to see what blocks of time on Thursday and Friday work for council. And obviously we need all of you. And then we could maybe set aside 8 hours, 4 and 4. And then we know Wednesday night we're going with a brief meeting. If that's the direction.
No, I think that makes sense. I
like
think that I'm hearing agreement from council members. Is that correct? Okay, awesome. And then, so I wanted to float this idea out there that I think is somewhat important. So again, what we're doing is we're taking a process that is normally done by the electorate, and we are doing it via, 3 people on this council right now, with the input of the public, definitely, but I want to give as many opportunities to the public as possible to weigh in. So the way that I had envisioned this timeline and structured it is that if we did our interviews on the 30th and the 31st, if necessary, we would have a good amount of time, given the 30-day timeline, a good amount of time between that and the August 11th meeting, where we would most likely have oaths of office and make appointments directly. And so I was thinking about the idea of maybe hosting a listening session the week before, where, you know, maybe we listen to the public as, you know, after the interviews, after there's been a couple of days to process that, and we can hear from community members. And maybe that means, you know, we make a decision at those meetings. But really, I wanted to just kind of give as many opportunities as we could to have public input on it. And I'll float that out there to other council members. And that would be a listening session the week of the 3rd.
So let me just make sure I'm understanding this. So next Wednesday, we have a special meeting that's specifically to evaluate questions that have been submitted, and then for us to finalize our interview questions. Thursday and Friday, we have blocks of time where we interview either all of the candidates or the top 20 candidates, or however many we narrow it down to. And then we have a little bit of time to kind of digest and think about things. I imagine there will probably be some public feedback via email during that time. And then we have another short open meeting with another opportunity for public feedback where we actually announce our decision before August 11th. Is that
so? Yes and no. So my intention with a listening session is not the goal of having that decision made right there and then. My goal is just to simply listen at that time. What I was stating is, if there's sorry, go ahead.
Well, I think that, I mean, my preference would be that we were a seated council of 5 by the August 11th meeting, if at all possible.
Okay.
So, you know, because that's at that point, we're resuming regular business. We've got stuff on the agenda. I think we've been, you know, it's been pointed out to us that we still have a quorum of 3, which, you know, a unanimous vote is not always possible with only 3 members, and that would stymie any business that came before us if we weren't able to get a consensus. So, you know, just in my preference, it's a little inside the 30-day window. So we would be going like 3 days quicker than we would have to. But I think it would be, you know, in terms of hitting the ground running with MSU coming back and the students coming back to campus so briefly after that. I mean, I really would like to be, you know, back to full strength by that meeting, if at all possible.
No, I don't disagree with that. I honestly am just gauging, you know, whether that timeline feels right or not. So maybe then, sorry, go ahead, City Manager.
Mayor, that you could advertise the Wednesday meeting for people to propose questions or also provide feedback on what people are looking for. So that Wednesday night can be sort of like the opportunity for the public to speak about the process, what they're looking for. People have already spoke tonight about what they're looking for, but that could be a chance for that. And then it's in advance of the interviews, I know, but they also can comment during the interview process, you know, at the end, because there's always time for public comment. And then making a decision. But one thing I would point out about the 3 is it would be much more comfortable to get the members quicker, because I discussed this with the city attorney. If anything were to happen at this point, I don't know how we appoint anybody if there's one more council member missing, because a quorum is 3. It's like a little constitutional crisis, because there's no authority of council anymore. So that's a legal situation to be 2 down. So the sooner you can get
masks on, everybody, and don't get sick.
What's that?
Keep your masks on and don't get sick.
Yes.
We can't.
Because we can't lose another member, because we can't transact any business at all. So I don't even know how you appoint someone for council if something were to happen. Of course, nothing's gonna happen to anybody. But
yeah, that's fine. So then would we be able to, so what we're looking at right now, just to rehash this timeline, is an application would go out tomorrow. That would be out in press release. There would also be a paper copy available for those who can't access it online. We'd give a week time to respond to that application. We would then have a meeting on Wednesday, the 22nd of July, to discuss finalizing questions and receive input from the community on what those questions should be and what they're looking for. Sorry, oh geez, I meant we would have the application out on the 21st. We would receive applications back on the 28th of July, have a meeting on Wednesday, the 29th, that we would receive input on questions from the community. We'd finalize those questions then. We'd then hold interviews the Thursday, the 30th, and Friday, the 31st. And then we would hold a meeting that next week to make a decision on who we would appoint, and then that appointment would be made then at our August 11th meeting.
Or you could appoint that night. What we've done in the past, council's done in the past, is make the decision at the conclusion of the meeting. So
Okay.
on that Thursday or Friday, council could, if you can come to consensus, could make your selections then. And then we could have a special meeting to appoint, or they could be appointed on the 11th and sworn in on the 11th. Obviously, the sooner they could be sworn in, the better, again, because we're down 2 members, but that's a decision for council as well. And, you know, one thing I would suggest perhaps to make sure we have enough time to fill out the information and put it all into a usable form, and to make sure everyone is clearly an East Lansing resident and all it should be, is to have the applications come back on Monday by 5.
Okay.
So we could have Tuesday, get the information posted Tuesday night, hopefully, so the names are all available. Then the agenda is up Wednesday all day. And then Wednesday night, you have a further conversation about questions. If people want to comment on things, they can. And then interviews Thursday and Friday as needed.
Okay.
And then
does
we would have a special meeting to decide an appointment.
Council, you know, what they've done in the past, like I said, is just had everyone at the end of that, at the conclusion of the interviews, hear from the public, because you have public comment, and then you make your selections right then. If you can't.
So Aaron's previous idea about a listening session post-interview, we would essentially move the listening session to pre-interview. That would be our question day. Okay. I think getting people, if we can reach consensus after the interviews, you know, I really would like to get whomever our new team members are going to be in place as soon as possible. They're going to have a fair amount of information to review in order to just kind of come to terms with the scope of their new job. And then, you know, if we can have them sworn in on the 11th at that meeting and move forward at full strength, I think that sounds, I think that sounds good, if it doesn't sound too intimidating to the rest of council.
Councilmember Babcock? Can you speak directly? Thank you.
A thought, you know, we don't know how many applications we're going to get. Do we want to leave room in there for a second interview if we find ourselves unable to make a decision based on the results of the first interview?
Mayor Pro Tem.
I think we do have that space. If we can't, we've got about a week and a half before the next council meeting. So we could call, you know, a Monday or Tuesday meeting, call back our top, you know, 4 candidates or something, and figure out some new question to ask them, I guess, or maybe re-ask them an old question, or maybe just have them represent themselves.
Yeah.
But I think we do technically have time to squeeze that in if we need to. So I think that.
So here, yeah. If you guys don't mind me saying something. So here's my, like, where I'm at on this. So I would be much more comfortable. I think I am comfortable with having public input, so public comment. I think what the city manager said was apt, having it at the end of the meeting during those interviews, because those would be public meetings, those would be public interviews. So having public comment at the end of those, I think makes sense. That's a good way to solicit public input at an official meeting. I think I would be more comfortable, and if this is not where council wants to go, then that's fine. If we did not make a decision at the date of the interviews, but we made a decision that next week. The only reason is I just, you know, this is a very important thing. I want to have time for folks to process. I think the way that I had envisioned this timeline is really to take advantage of all, you know, as many of the 30 days as we can, although I am very cognizant of the fact that we do need to have a full council to do business. But given the fact that our next real meeting is on August 11th, where we have a lot of business item agendas, maybe we would be able to schedule a meeting for, so after the interviews on the 30th and 31st, schedule a meeting for Tuesday, August 4th, where we can make an actual decision at that point on who we would appoint. Mayor Pro Tem.
So I just found myself imagining what's going to happen between the last day of the interviews and the day that we appoint. And I think there's a strong possibility of any of those candidates individually reaching out for us and trying to, you know, kind of represent something that they might not have said accurately in their interview, or, you know, maybe they thought of something afterwards. And that, I don't know, that doesn't sit right with me. I really kind of think that we should do it all in one bundle. Or we should specifically decide that we're going to win. No, I think we should do it right after the interviews. I don't want to leave any time for people to kind of promote themselves after that interview process in a way that wouldn't be available to other people.
Okay. Councilmember Babcock, your opinion?
That's a really good point. I was thinking about the exhaustion factor after listening to several people after 2 days. Is there a way, I don't know if this is possible, so I'm open to suggestion. Is there a way that we, frankly, ask people to not contact us, or kind of put a moratorium on answering our emails for 24 hours so we can kind of get a little distance to think it over? Because you make a really good point, Jesse, but I also know that in the interview process, I mean, the first person makes a big impression, the last person makes a big impression, and sometimes, chalk it up to me being over 50, when you've been sitting in a room for a while, sometimes what happens in the middle gets a little confused.
Mayor Stevens.
Yes.
I just want to point out that we do have an election August 4th.
Oh, yes. So that meeting would actually have to be, thank you, Jackson. That meeting would actually, if we were to go forward with that, would actually have to be on the Wednesday, August 5th. So thank you for that, Jackson. Okay, so we got 3 members here on this council, and we need to come to somewhat of an agreement. So I'm hearing from Jessie that she would like to move forward with an appointment at the meeting that we hold the interviews. And I'm looking to Councilmember Babcock to maybe get her opinion, because I think she is somewhat of the swing in this situation.
Not for any strategic reason, I promise you, but it suddenly, I can't remember whether I'm scheduled to work that election or not, but as you both know, those are really long days and one is not at their cognitive best. So I'm going to try to get out of my commitment to work the election that day if I made it. I see merits both ways. I mean, I Mayor Stevens?
No, I understand that. I mean, this is the important process, right? We're having a discussion in public about this, and I think everybody, wants what's best for the city. And we're all just trying to assess what that is. I agree with, the acting Mayor Pro Tem's points. I think that makes sense. I mean, there is a lot of opportunity, and truthfully, you can't tell a council member not to respond to an email or, not to have a phone call with somebody. So, no, that makes a lot of sense to me. My point, of course, remains that we do only have 30 days for this, and this is a process that is normally done by the electorate. So, giving kind of as much time as possible for folks to, whether it's via email, that are members of the community, say, I really like what this person said during the interview, interest groups to weigh in, that kind of thing. It is important for me. And so that's why I had suggested, having another meeting after the interviews to have this discussion. I as well agree, acting Mayor Pro Tem, that we should have people on board for our August 11th meeting. I agree with that wholeheartedly. And so, I think that, go ahead.
So what if it crushes everything really tight together, but what if we do our listening session on Wednesday, our 2 days of block interviews on Thursday and Friday, and then we deliberate on Saturday morning, so that there's not time to, we get to sleep on it, but there's not a huge amount of time for people to try to, further their chances, I guess. Seems so weird to be thinking about this, but it's a lot.
Okay.
It's a lot day after day. So,
Councilmember Babcock.
I really like that idea. Could we schedule it for 10 a.m. or later?
I'm looking at the city manager. That is a Saturday. Would that be able to do?
One of the thought is, if you get a number of candidates, 8 perhaps, you may be able to do them all on Thursday and then do your second meeting Friday as your selection meeting. So
Yeah.
it depends on how many people we get, but I think that that's a good schedule. And we'll just have to play it by ear with what we see on Wednesday. We'll hold the dates, hold the times, and then perhaps we can condense it because we still would need to post the 18 hours in advance, I believe, to do the posting for Friday. But Friday can sort of be a blocked off day for additional interviews or that selection meeting that Mayor Pro Tem mentioned.
So, okay, that makes sense to me. The one point that I will make is this is a process that a lot of people in the community are looking towards. And so what I really want to do tonight is I want to have details and meetings hammered down. So I want to be able to point to the process and be like, this is the day that we're talking about this. This is the day that we're talking about this. This is the day we're doing interviews. This is the day that we're going to make the decision, right? Please feel free to comment at any of those points, but this is that process. It also, makes it so our applicants know exactly what they're looking at in terms of a process. So I'm okay with that Saturday timeline, especially if there's a public comment section at the beginning of that meeting. I think that does give some opportunity there as well to give public comment after the interview day. I know that we'll have a public comment, section at the end of those interview meetings, but the truth is that if we are going to be interviewing folks for 4 or 5 hours, maybe people, are exhausted and need an overnight to process what they're going to say to the council. So then I'm okay with moving like that if the rest of council is on board.
So do we also want to try to set Thursday the time schedule that we can go? Should we go with an afternoon into the evening? Should we go with an evening? What's council's preference for Thursday?
Go ahead.
Well, so Wednesday is our listening session where we will be collating suggested questions and finalizing the list of interview questions. So those will be public on Wednesday night.
Yep.
I think that and probably immediately published through council communications or posted on the website afterwards. I don't know if we can have that.
We can email to the candidates.
Okay. So I think actually then Thursday evening is better if that is okay with other people, because it gives those candidates, 10-ish hours to kind of get their thoughts in order before we interview them, and they will have those questions in their hand. So if that, and evenings are great for me because my store is shut. So
5 p.m. on Thursday to start early to have enough time to do 4 hours, or is that too early for people, 5 p.m.?
No, I think that's fine.
Okay, and then can we schedule right now that would happen as well on Friday? I'm going to be honest with you. I think that during this process, we're going to have a good problem in the fact that we're going to have a lot of great people that apply. And I just want to be ready at this point to say that we're probably going to need two days of interviews.
Friday at 9 a.m. to start, and then that'll either be additional interviews till noon, or it will be the selection period. 9 a.m. for Friday?
Yes, and then if we don't need that until 9 a.m. on Friday.
So I would say 9 a.m. Friday is a second day of interviews as needed. And then the Saturday at 10 a.m., it would be the day that we would make the selection process. Is that what I'm hearing from folks? So the only thing on Friday would be the extra day for interviews.
Councilmember Babcock may have a conflict. Can you do Friday morning, Councilmember Babcock?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, the only reason why I'm edging on the side of caution when it comes to if we need it, kind of things, is I want to have all of this, hammered down as much as we can. So that way, after tonight's meeting, when that application is posted online, we can say this is the exact timeline. So folks know.
Yep.
Okay. So do we have agreement on that? George, is that clear at this point?
Wednesday, 7 p.m. for finalizing questions and publishing the questions. 7 p.m. also, that meeting is an opportunity for the public to weigh in on the process. Thursday, 5 p.m. for interviews. Friday, 9 a.m. as needed for additional interviews. Both of those days we'll keep it to 4 hours or less is what our goal will be. And then Saturday, 10 a.m. will be a final selection meeting where council will make their decision.
Okay, that sounds great. Yep, Councilmember Babcock.
That in motion. Do we need that in motion form?
You can sort of make a motion and say you'd want to direct the city manager to publish the application. And I don't know if we have finalized what we said on the application. Do you want it to be this entire list of
Yeah,
questions?
that was going to be my next point going into that.
I won't make a motion. Go ahead.
Yeah. So the next conversation that we should have is the draft application questions. You know, since we are talking about interviewing, hopefully everyone that is eligible for the process, this application is fairly general, in the sense that we would know a little bit about them. We'd know prior government, volunteering, community involvement experience. Why are you interested in serving? Any potential conflicts of interest. I saw that on a couple of city council vacancy applications. I thought that probably made sense. And then an attachment of their resume. And of course the address on there to verify residency, and, you know, background. So again, it's very general. It doesn't have many specifics in it. And I think that's the point, because we get into specifics when we get to the meeting. Does anybody have any input on those questions?
Just to say, I agree with any potential conflicts of interest. I think that's good for people to kind of have that in their mind as they're applying, in case they self-edit out because they realize that they're not going to be able to complete the responsibilities. You know, in general, I think basically we're just kind of asking people to confirm their eligibility, and then like a tiny amount about their previous experience in their resume, but then really all of the questions, the more meaty, weighty part of our selection process will be those questions that we come up with on Wednesday night. So the fact that this is very basic is not a problem to me. I think that's actually good. And then the, you know, weightier stuff will come up in those interview process. So I think that's great.
Okay. Councilmember Babcock, and then George, I'll come to you.
Thing, and I'm sure the city does this anyway, but some sort of the block about if you need accommodations, please tell us what they are, with a disclaimer saying this will in no way impede your application. We just want to be sure that if you need assistance, I know there's EOE language out there. If you need assistance completing the application or accommodations through the interview process, we are more than happy to make that. Please contact us. This will not harm your application. That was rather untactfully said, but I think you know where I'm going. That's
City manager.
Yep, understood. So just to mention, the only challenge will be is if we are inundated with applications, Wednesday night will not be enough time to reduce the number of applicants, because we will need to have already told people to be available for those 2 days. So, so that's the one problem, the tight time frame of Wednesday night. So we would be counting on the fact that we will be able to interview everybody those next 2 days. And if it's less than 15 people, we should be fine.
But
25 or 30 people, there's no way we're going to be able to do that in 2 days.
How many applicants did we have for the police oversight board? It was something around 15.
I believe there was 45.
One more time,
Emily?
I believe there was 45 applicants or somewhere around there.
Okay, yeah, so yeah, okay.
I think there's going to be much fewer for this type of position, because of the in-camera interview is going to be a bit of a barrier to some people wanting to serve, but we'll have to see. And it's a tremendous time commitment as well, council. It's not.
Yeah, yikes. Well, technically speaking, if we have to change the Saturday to a third day of interviews, we have enough notice to publicize that, right? So, but gosh, I kind of hope not.
I hope not. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I hope not too, but then in that case, we could make Saturday a round of interviews and do, because we want the public to be able to weigh in, make maybe Monday at 5 o'clock or Monday at 7 o'clock, the listening session and discussion. So that could still work. We don't, it's hard to plan when we don't know how many applications we're going to get. So
yeah,
we're just going to have to roll with it, I guess.
Yeah, and we are, again, we are trying to set a solid timeline on something that's not so solid right now, so I understand that. But that of course is why I made the comment in the beginning that I want to make, the best effort to basically interview anybody that is eligible, right? So having that in mind going forward means that we have, those 2 days and then, an option for the third then, because I think that satisfies that need. So, okay, City Manager, do you have anything else? I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's all. I think we should probably tell people in the press release that there'll be live interviews via Zoom, televised interviews on Thursday and Friday and potentially Saturday, so that people know that they have to have that part of those schedule free. And if they're unavailable during those couple of days, that they may not be able to participate. So that may be something we want to say right now so that they know to keep their schedule free.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then to Councilmember Babcock's point, could we also, in the response, if somebody submits an application, obviously making sure that we respond with the timeline, but if we could have kind of an addition that says, like, if you don't have access to a device that would be able to, accommodate a public interview, an on-camera interview, that we can make accommodations for folks. I don't know whether that's through, somebody actually just going to City Hall and having, their own cleaned and sanitized room and a device to do that, but making sure that folks have some accessibility there.
Yes.
Councilmember Babcock.
Acquaintance last week who similar position, applied for a township position and was unaware of the time when the application cut off. So the application cut off at 5 p.m. He went to work, went home, submitted it, and is still quite disappointed. So let's make sure that whatever the cutoff time is, people know that that's it. Many of us live in a 24-hour world, but I also understand that for city staff, you might want a 5 o'clock cutoff, but we might want to emphasize that for a lot of folks.
Yep.
Okay, so hearing some agreement on those questions and hearing agreement on the timeline, I will then make a motion to instruct the city manager to go forward with the timeline as laid out at this city council meeting, as well as releasing an application along with a press release outlining the timeline and where to find the application. As the questions were written out on the add-on item application questions on the regular council special meeting, 20th of July meeting. Does that make sense?
Correct. It's clear to me.
I'll look for a second. Okay, seconded by the acting Mayor Pro Tem. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. One more time, Councilmember Babcock, were you voting in the affirmative?
Yes, aye.
Wonderful, thank you. Okay, that passes unanimously. Acting Mayor Pro Tem, you had something?
Can we get some sort of communication either through our regular council communication email list or posted on the city website or a press release telling people that we are accepting community input on questions? Can we put that out?
That's a good note. It's a good note. And if possible, George, if we could, have those public meeting. Oh, you know what? Now I'm thinking about it. The requirement for having agenda items on via Zoom meetings probably would hinder posting of these public meetings now rather than later. But if we do have a clear consensus on what the agenda would be on Wednesday next week, just getting that posted as soon as possible as well.
Yep.
Okay. Is there any other comment, questions on this item as we move forward?
Nope.
Okay. So I'll take a point of personal privilege to just go ahead. Okay. So I'll take a point of personal privilege to say that, this is going to be a process that, while it has a quick turnaround time, it's important. I think that we're going to be again, and I'll state this again, I don't think our problem is going to be that we don't get good applicants. I think it's going to be that we have a lot of good applicants. There are so many in our community that have served in the past, that have been activists, that have been involved in the community, that have been involved in their neighborhood boards and commissions, or just, you know, really a voice for certain aspects of the community that I think are going to apply. And we're going to have a really tough decision moving forward. Which is why I wanted this process to be as public as possible and as transparent as possible. So that way we could solicit as much input as we possibly could. You know, I think that new council members are going to have to hit the ground running. And that's why, you know, I made in my comments that we should have a training for those new council members. I think I'm going to hopefully convene with the city manager after today's meeting to work with MML on something like that, you know, knowing that they have extended those services in the past for newly elected officials. Given that this is an unprecedented time, I'm sure that we could work with them for some one-on-one assistance. And then, you know, I'm committed to going out and talking to people who have formerly served and ask them, you know, what do you think you really wanted to know when you were coming in? What's something that you learned a year down the road that you wish you knew on day one? Because we want to make sure that those folks have all the information available. You know, I'm not looking at anybody in particular for this. What I'm really looking for is somebody, you know, or some people that are going to come in. They're going to be passionate about their own issues. They're going to be willing and able to work with our incredible city staff and ready to challenge, or ready to take on challenges that are just unprecedented in East Lansing's history, because that's what the job is. So I'm looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to the process, and I'm looking forward to having 2 new people to work with. So thank you, everybody. That's the last item on our agenda. I appreciate everybody being on, and I will see you very, very soon. So we are adjourned.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.